When you're doing that, do you guys have an aha moment? Is there like when you're creating a game and just know, oh, this is it. This is a big one?
We have too many. That's the problem is, with games in particular, very often you think you've got the aha moment and it feels like, wow, we just nailed it and this is the next big thing forever. But until you actually play it, until you actually have users test it, until you actually get it out into the wild and start sort of tweaking the levers in terms of difficulty and how people play it and the people's progression through the game, you never really know. So I can tell you that with some of our successful games, we've had 20 aha moments, and many of them have been wrong, but we've kept working and been nimble and eventually gotten to the final aha, which is, wow, 100 million people are playing this game. That's the real aha. And in the conceptual stage, there's usually several ahas you have to sort of continue to work toward. But one thing I'll say that I think sets us apart a little bit from other game developers is we really think of our games as a service to the user. So, for instance, when we put a game out, we almost think of that as an alpha version of the game. And very quickly, we'll get feedback from users and we'll get data, seeing what part of the game they really love, what part of the games that are not really working for them, what's too hard, what's too easy. And that constant tweaking happens day in, day out to really make sure that we're working toward that aha moment. And then the second piece is, if you don't keep putting out new content, even if you have a game that feels like the best game in the world, but you don't keep supporting it with new content, fresh content, new gameplay mechanics, you're going to lose people's interest very quickly, and it's never going to become that, multi-million-dollar franchise.
And another trait that kind of sets you apart is your master key software. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a little bit of what I've been talking about up till now, which is it was this technology that Aber and the tech team created from the start, which is basically enables us to build a game once on this technology platform, and then when the game is complete, you're able to port it to all platforms. That's number one. And then number two, if you play, let's say you play one of our games on the iPhone, and then you put it down and you go to work and you play it on Facebook, and then you go home and it's on your tablet, on the couch or in bed, your profile is going to follow you from place to place. So they're not standalone incarnations of the game. Master Key really allows us to let you forget about the technology and continue your game, whatever device you're playing it on. So honestly, that's been one of our sort of greatest assets to date, and it's enabled us to get games out faster and allow the games to get much bigger because people can play them anywhere, anytime.
And I just want to go back a little bit. I heard you mention a word, and that's nimble. And I've read the articles, but for our viewers, can you tell them a little bit about what that word means to you?
Sure. I mean, I just talked a little bit about being comfortable with failure. And I think being nimble is about assessing very quickly what's working and what's not, and being able to pivot to what is working and sort of not be too emotionally tied to, what maybe you thought was going to work, what previously was your aha moment, but at the end of the day just isn't working that well with users. And so I think, for instance, if we had come up with our business plan at the start and certain aspects of it hadn't worked, if we weren't built to be nimble and to be able to constantly sort of tweak and adjust and turn the knobs and flip the levers in order to make our product fit exactly what works with users, we would never be able to be successful. And I think you can look at some of the biggest competitors in the space. I mean, a lot of people, for instance, have said that Zynga had a hard time pivoting to mobile. They always really considered themselves a social game company. Mobile kind of came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden their games weren't quite as competitive on that platform. And so we're trying to make nimbleness, if that's a word, institutional here. So no matter what platform people are playing on, no matter what types of games, no matter what characters in our games people love, being able to adjust our business to support those those desires of the users.
I think you guys are doing a pretty amazing job.
We're working
with that.
on it. It's a full-time job.
And your revenues are doubling, and you're constantly looking to add new games to your platform. Are there any young gaming companies right now that are really getting you excited?
God, I mean, there are so many amazing games. I mean, first, our industry is young as a whole. Like, very few successful companies in our space are older than 3 years old. So I think there was a sort of a first generation of social game companies that kind of took the lead at the very start, the Zyngas and Platums of the world. And I think now there's a second generation of cross-platform game development companies which are sort of emerging as the new leaders, like Supercell, like King, that we consider ourselves part of that class, if you will, and we're proud of what they're doing. We think everyone's success is bringing the industry up, and every time I see, one of my friends who never would have played a video game before, or my mother who is not at all interested in playing video games, all of a sudden playing, a word game with a friend that someone created, that's great, even if it's not our game, because it means people are becoming gamers, and games are becoming part of people's lives when they weren't before. So it's expanding the opportunity base.
Well, and I know you're also in charge of marketing, and I've just, from a personal perspective, I've never been able to determine whether it's best to market to people who are already using your product or to market to a completely new audience to try to acquire more users.
Yeah.
What do you think is best?
There's not one that's best. Once again, I'm sorry if I'm not giving you a good answer, but we actually have divisions doing both. So we have people who are solely responsible for exposing our game to people who we think would like it but maybe have never played it before, and bringing them sort of into the SGN ecosystem. And then we also have people who are thinking about, based on what you've played before, maybe you'd like this other level or this other additional content we've built into a game, or maybe we noticed that you were very focused on this gameplay mechanic, so we're going to cross-promote you to another game within our network. So I guess communicating with existing users for us and really developing a relationship with them so that, we give them free gifts all the time, gifts within the game, virtual currency gifts. We have a constant communication going with them. That's just as important as bringing new users in. And I think one of the biggest failures in some companies actually is focusing on bringing new users in, but then not focusing on sort of internal marketing, on really treating those users as being part of the family and continuing to serve them in different ways.
For beginning entrepreneurs or for people who aren't too knowledgeable in this field, can you tell us one thing that people might not know about mergers and acquisitions?
For someone who's interested in acquiring another company or wants to be acquired?
Both sides.
Okay, so I think oftentimes companies, smaller companies especially, sort of have a vision of, I'm going to sort of, I see someone who's creating something that either I want or I'm creating something that I think they would want. So obviously, we should merge or we should be acquired. And I think culture is such an important part of what makes a company a company. And you see so many times when companies get acquired and there's not a cultural fit, and a year later you see them shutting down the entity. And so I think if you actually want M&A to work, starting out by working a little bit with that potential partner or that potential acquirer, really making sure there's a cultural fit and that you guys can, create something beautiful together and wonderful together is really, really important. So I guess my advice would be to date a little bit from an M&A perspective before you get married.
I like that. So if the culture isn't there, step back a little bit and assess whether or not this is really going to work out.
I think if the culture is not there, it almost never works out. I think there has to be at least in our company, vision is so important in terms of us all sort of rowing in the same direction. We're still small enough and hopefully innovative enough that if a whole division were not on the same page about what we're trying to accomplish, it would be not only not productive, it would be counterproductive for everyone else within the organization. So for us, it's really, really important to believe that we're approaching things in the same way before we make that acquisition. And I'd rather, even if the price is amazing, I'd rather not make an acquisition if we either don't get along or don't have the same vision with a target.
Absolutely. So I want to fast forward for a second
Oh,
and
boy.
pretend that we're sitting here and it's September 2014.
Okay.
What do you want to be talking about?
I want to be talking about the difficulty of scaling so quickly and having so many successful games that are continuing to be played worldwide. I want to be talking about the best way to position our franchises and our games and our characters and our stories in other forms of media beyond games. And I want to be talking about how to help other companies. Let's assume we've had some success a year from now. How to help other small companies also take it to the next level. Both for the desire to help others, but also because you'll have strong partners that you're aligned with, and you can help each other to continue to build each other's businesses.